My name's Anthony Whealy. I'm the chair of the Centre for Public Integrity. Just as the King of England, and before him the Queen, used to bring a Christmas message to their people, I'd like to do the same today, if I may. I often ask myself, why did I take on the role of chair, and why am I still here? I hope to answer those two questions in the course of these brief remarks. As a judge, I was in the Supreme Court for about, nearly 13 years. You don't have much time to think about integrity in public administration. You're really too busy trying to resolve disputes between person A and person B, or in a criminal trial, you're overseeing a very scary dispute between the might of the state and a defendant. That takes all your time. And of course, in the course of it, you do see plenty of human failings, and you also do see some wonderful human recoveries. But along the way, you see greed, dishonesty, avarice, and so on. But not much of it generally relates to what I would call problems in public administration. So when I retired 12 years ago, I took up the position of chair of Transparency International Australia. And in that role, I began to understand that there were many things I did not understand about integrity, and particularly integrity in public administration. But I began to learn. And then I left Transparency International, and I was at a bit of a loose end, contemplating the horrors of spending my aging years, perhaps twiddling my thumbs, or even more horrible, the prospect of playing golf. Anyway, I was saved from those calamities because the founder of our Centre for Public Integrity, Han Albie, talked me into taking over the position of chair. They said that some of the other directors were very fiery characters, and indeed they were. And they suggested to me that these directors might need a calming influence. Apparently, that was to be me. So in short, I fell into this position more by default than anything else. Well, the longer I've stayed and the longer I've worked with our current CEO and Executive Director, Catherine Williams, and her marvellous team, I've come to realise that there is a serious need for integrity in our public institutions. Our goal, as I've come to understand it, is to bolster Australia's democratic foundations and to build the country's democratic resilience. Now, all that, I suppose, might sound a bit pompous and possibly a bit abstract, so let me put it in more practical terms. If democracy is to survive and flourish, the community must have trust in their institutions. They must have trust in their leaders. And for some years now, regrettably, we've seen that trust decline. Why has that happened, you might ask? Well, I think too often we've seen very poor behaviour, indeed corrupt behaviour, dishonest behaviour, in many areas of government and public administration. Look, for example, at robo-debt. Look back some years to the pork barrelling scandals of the Morrison years. Let me make it clear that I'm not being political in this. Both sides at all levels of government have been involved on occasions in some truly shocking behaviour. On the other hand, can I also make it clear that I believe many of our politicians and many of our public servants are wonderful people, truly motivated by proper considerations of the public interest. But nevertheless, these things have happened and they have undermined trust. So the golden rule, I think, is simply this. Public integrity, and I mean, that's the phrase that appears in the title of our organisation, public integrity means that people and policies and institutions of our Australian democracy must be coerced, if you like, or at least coaxed into always advancing the best interests of the people they represent. That is, let me put it simply, to act always in the public interest. So, against that background, we have to restore the community's trust in government and institutions, and to do this by fortifying integrity throughout those governments and institutions. So how has the centre gone about playing its role in that? Well, I think its method for achieving this has been really quite unique. And I'm sorry if I'm not being particularly modest about this, but I'm very proud of it, actually. What the centre has done is to convene Australia's leading integrity experts to identify key failings and danger areas through rigorous research, and then to produce evidence-based solutions based on sound policy. Then to ask those integrity experts to advocate the solutions in a vigorous and articulate manner. So our merry band of brothers and sisters comprises some retired judges. It comprises an eminent barrister. It comprises some wonderful academics. And putting all that together, I think we have set out to inform and educate the public, to instruct and educate public officials, and to insist always on integrity and accountability, and the continued need always to serve the public interest. It's a big ask, isn't it? But look, I think that we've done it rather well, and particularly if you think that we've had to do it with very limited resources. And that's a great achievement, I think, for Catherine Williams and her wonderful team. So over the course of this year, I look back on it with some pride. I ask myself, what's the biggest win we've had? And I would just turn to a particular interest I've had throughout the year, and that is to curb the undue influence of money in politics. I won't trouble you all with a lecture on the subject now, but there's no doubt that the inpouring of money through donations of an extravagant kind does carry with it a desire from those who give the large donations, a wish to get access to government. And once they have that access, they expect the big donations to reap rewards for them in that they can secure influence over what the government does. And that's not a good thing. I mean, apart from anything else, we're all entitled to access government. We're all part of a democracy, but the fact is we don't. Neither you or I, may I suggest, have the capacity to ring the Prime Minister or one of the Ministers of State and want to see him within the next hour or so. But people who donate big money can do that. And then there are the allied problems of lobbying, which at a federal level is completely out of control. It's more or less unregulated. And also the allied problem of what's called the curse of the revolving door. And that, by that I refer to politicians and senior bureaucrats who leave their jobs in public life and take up positions in commerce, whereupon they become of great value to those corporations and other organisations because of their connections to government. All those things combine together to be quite unhealthy for our democracy. So our research has showed that we need donation caps. We've got to bring that money level down. In terms of donations, we have a need to bring down public expenditure at election time, because that's what the money is also used for. And it becomes a contest of dollars, not of ideas. That's the last thing we want in an election. So at the same time, I think our research has shown that while we place these caps, if we can, on donations and expenditure, we nevertheless have to keep in mind that we don't want to wreck the democratic system. For example, we don't want to dissuade independent people from standing for Parliament. So we have to take that into account as a factor as well. So for us, our most substantial triumph this year was in South Australia. Our wonderful Executive Director, Catherine Williams, began a close collaboration with Premier Malinowskis and his team. And in the course of those negotiations and visitations, Catherine was able to help transform a weak set of reform proposals into one of the strongest political pieces of integrity legislation in this country. It's good for South Australia, but it's a good example of integrity elsewhere. By contrast, we've perhaps not been able to achieve what we would have liked to achieve with the federal government, who also introduced at the end of the year legislation to put caps on donations and political expenditure. But this was a different beast altogether. We've had very little input yet into this legislation. We would like to, and our fear is that it may be what's described as a political fait accompli, namely that the two major parties want to see this legislation ultimately go through, but not so much because it will solve the problem of the undue influence of money, but because it might stop the rot, as they see it, of independents being elected to Parliament. Well, I hope that's not what it's about, but there is at least a perception that that's so. And certainly this legislation on its face does not stop the flow of big money to the major political parties. It does, however, stop the flow of money largely to independents. And therein lies a problem that we must address. Anyway, coming back to the South Australian victory, that was terrific. And I'm so pleased that that happened. Anyway, there we are. That's been the best thing for the year. It leads me to my final question that I set at the beginning. Why am I still here? Well, at a personal level, I have to say that I've had a wonderfully fulfilling career. However, I retired 12 years ago. So these last 12 years have given me the opportunity to put something back into the community, and I have derived great pleasure from acting as the chair of this institution, of learning about integrity, and of helping to advocate for better integrity in public administration. It's something I am most grateful for, that I've been given that opportunity. I want to see trust restored in our institutions. I want to see democratic institutions protected. I want to see our integrity institutions strengthened, and I want to see the restoration of honesty in our electoral processes. Again, a very big ask, you might say. But overall, I want to see a future in which Australians care about their democracy and cherish its benefits. So if I've been able to play a small role over the years in achieving some progress in these areas, I will certainly go to my grave, not too soon, I hope, a very grateful man. But for now, I remain deeply committed to this work, and I'll continue to do it as long as I am able. I look back on the year, and I'm very proud of what the Centre has achieved. And although I'm occasionally pessimistic, I'm generally hopeful for what lies ahead. Thank you all for allowing me to share this message with you. I wish you all the best for Christmas and the holiday season.